This video is sponsored by HobbyLink Japan. Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another review, and today I'm going to be taking a look at another Armored Core model kit by 30 Minute Missions. This right here is G1 Michigan's Liger tail. This right here is the first tetrapod AC that we've seen from this line so far. It's really big and it comes in a huge box too. That's pretty much the size of a master grade Gundam model kit box. Now this did actually take me a little bit by surprise. I've built 3 of these so far and I expected this to be pretty much the same, but there is a lot of building in this beast right here. But before I go any further, I got this kit right here from those awesome people over at HobbyLink Japan, so I will throw a link down there in the description. Now let's get to it. So jumping right on into the build, and this box, like I mentioned, is pretty much the size of a master grade Gundam model kit box. It may be a little bit, well, skinnier than your usual one, but it is a massive box and the biggest box I've seen when it comes to 30-minute missions, excluding that big old Rex thing that we saw before. But when it comes to AC, this is huge. When it comes to the manual, it's the same thing we would have seen before, showing all the information about the AC itself, the parts that it's made up of, the equipment that it comes with, the runners that make up this model kit, as well as the instructions. And even though this is a little bigger than what we would have seen before, the build is pretty much exactly the same. With this kit, I started right into it with the leg units, and the main reason for that is the fact that I was just so excited about the fact that we've got a tetrapod AC at last. This builds up very nicely, and still kind of simply with a ton of detail, just like we've seen from the Armored Core 30-minute missions line so far. We've got 4 hip joint cup sections for the legs to attach into. The color detail all builds up onto this. We do have some nice sandwich detail inside of it, some large plates that attach together, some tiny little verniers around back. And speaking of verniers, there are a lot on this kit. We do build up 2 little side units that have 2 verniers a pop. These are attached onto the parts already, so no finicky little bits. And this waist unit then just basically attaches together a bunch of layering detail onto it. Again, simple but effective. Next up in here, we've got the legs, and there are 4 of these, so there's going to be a lot of repeat building. However, the front legs and the rear legs are different, so it's not too much of the same. You build up a lot of the same kind of units for the upper leg sections. All of the feet on here are the same. They consist of 4 parts, all in the one color. And when it does come to the legs, we've got some nice joints in here. They attach together very nicely, some very unique attaching together of parts like we've seen from this line so far. We've got some bits that attach on and then recess in under the parts you've already attached in a nice seamless kind of fashion. Again, we've got 2 tiny verniers per leg, so lots of tiny little parts. We've even got more on the back legs. And then it's just a case of layering on the detail onto that. The only part of the build that does separate the 2 different front legs to make them right and left is the upper section that attaches into the hips. It's just a different kind of setup for the waist joint. Everything's nice and strong feeling, but I did mess up on one little section during the build, which I will mention a little bit later on. When it comes to the rear legs, these are kind of the same, but a little bit thicker towards the knee segment with some more verniers inside of them. Otherwise, it builds up all the same nice layering of parts, fantastic surface detail, and overall it just works out nicely. We've got some vernier covers, a lot of parts in grey coming from underneath, and overall very impressive. Again, the same as the front legs, and we do have an upper section that separates the right leg from the left leg. Otherwise, the same build. Moving up now to the torso, and again, large parts that attach together, so not a lot of building but a whole lot of payoff. You build up the upper body, then the waist section. The upper body does have tons and tons of layering parts. 2 stickers are required for on this. I did not attach those on, and overall when you do pop this together, it has incredible detail with some smaller parts towards the end of the build that give it a lot of nice character. Next up, we've got the arms, and just like with the legs, you kind of build these at the same time to a point. Basically, the shoulder joint, the upper arm, and the elbow joint build up the same on both. Again, very nicely detailed and very simple. Again, just like we've seen with this line so far, what separates the left arm from the right arm is the ability to attach melee weapons onto the left arm, and the shoulders are pretty much the same, except they are kind of mirrored versions of each other. And again, a lot of nice parts layering up fantastically on these, and an incredible amount of surface detail. Last up then, we've got the head. This is a mix of impressive and a little bit disappointing, which is kind of what we've seen from the line so far. A lot of parts build up ever so nicely. You see the head taking shape towards the end of the build, but the only kind of down point is the fact that the eyes on this are not color separated at all, so it means it does look a little bit simple and a little bit dead straight out of box. Mildly disappointing, but it's a great foundation for a little bit of color. And speaking of which, that is exactly what I did, but I'll come back to that in a second. Let's talk about the equipment first. So when it does come to the equipment, the main event in here is the HUBEN, or the Huben Gatling gun. This thing is so big it's got its own full runner. All the equipment here does, because it's probably going to get sold separately in future, but this is a large runner and a very nice high-grade-esque sized Gatling if you ever want one, because everyone wants one. The initial aspects of this build up, just sandwiching parts together, fairly simple. When we get to the barrels, it's 3 segments that attach together, lock up in front with this little disc section. The ammo drum for this just builds up as 4 separate parts, and an interesting almost kind of rack or resting kind of section on the bottom that kind of allows you to just lay it on the ground. We do have a ammo belt in here. This is made of a nice rubbery flexible material, just slots through the parts like so, locks into the other end like this, so it's not finicky, awkward, or going to drop on you, and then it attaches into the side of the Gatling like so, and into the drum like this. It doesn't move with the arm or anything like that, so unlike some other high-grade gunpowder we would have seen in the past, with this sort of thing, this works out very well. The next weapon we have in here is a split missile system for up on the shoulder. You build 2 of the same missile unit section made out of 4 parts like this. Again, everything is super perfectly detailed in here. There's little rack rail sections on the sides of them to attach them together, and then one which finally attaches it onto the attachment point, which will attach it onto the shoulders. Again, impressive as always. Next up in here is the Songbirds. My actual camera filled up at this point, so I didn't actually finish it off, but we've seen the Songbirds before with the Nightfall, so nothing new here. We have seen it before. It's also in the sold separately weapon pack too, so nothing new. Lastly then, here we've got the Taiyang Shou Explosive Thrower. This is again a very, very nice weapon. The attention to detail is fantastic. It layers up in tons and tons and tons and tons of parts, and it does have a little bit of a, not quite opening mechanism, but a little bit of a kind of flipping mechanism for actually displaying the missiles inside of it, which is a cool touch. Again, I'll talk about that when I'm getting into the accessories later on. And speaking of winding back to something, out of box, this is definitely a very impressive looking mecha model kit. Now, I do feel that these kits in general, and it goes for all model kits really, they definitely benefit from a little bit of detailing up. Now, I didn't go as crazy on this right here as I did on the Nightfall, but I did have to bring out the eyes on the head. They just were so lost. I did exactly what I did before. That is, I grabbed some markers from Dispay. These are very, very good, mainly because they've got extremely fine brush tips. So unlike anything by Bandai or GSI Crayons, these are easy to use straight out of the, marker onto fine aspects like the eye cameras on this. So I just dotted this onto each one. This is the chrome one, and followed that up with Tamiya's absolutely amazing, beautiful, clear red. I would recommend 2 coats to fully get the red out of this, but I just went with the one. And there was a couple of mild screw-ups because, again, no matter what you do, when things are this small and you're using a marker, it can be easy to kind of clip or touch something you don't want to. So I did use a little bit of GSI Crayons' Gundam marker, the kind of flow style ones, just to kind of fill in around them so you couldn't really see where the kind of flubs were. It did work out quite well, and while I had these panel lining markers out, I decided to panel line up at least the front of this AC to bring out all of that nice detail. And when I say nice detail, this thing is crazy panel lined, especially on the torso. It is obscenely nice. Again, these are kits that I do recommend going the whole hog on. If you're not going to fully paint them, then at least panel line, detail, and top coat. And of course, battle damage. Anyway, onto the review. So first off, jumping right on into the aesthetics, and the first thing I can mention about this is, and I probably should have guessed from, the fact that this is a tetrapod AC, is this thing is absolutely massive. When it comes to a 30-minute missions kit, this is really, really big. I always kind of consider them in and around the same size as a high-grade Gundam kit, but there's so much mass to this absolute beast. On top of that, the detailing is incredible. Because it is a little bit bigger and because the legs are so detailed, it just looks impressive. There's verniers everywhere. The various aspects of the body, backpack, it's just got detail crammed in everywhere. Again, my only real personal complaint with this kit is the fact that the eyes on it, or the face sensors, were just so dead. This is something you definitely have to detail up just to bring it to life, but besides that, it is a perfect, beautiful, heavy-duty armored core mecha. So speaking of size, there's a size comparison to two other Armored Core 6 kits, that being Steel Haze on the left and the Orbiter on the right. As you can see, it is in line with the size of these, and from the front perspective, it looks pretty much in and around the same size. However, this right here is the sort of kit that does really kind of shine from above because of the amount of mass outwards. Overall, a really nice big kit. So now popping up beside some high-grade Gunpla, the weird thing is here, it doesn't actually look that big beside them, even though when you're actually in person with the kit, it feels and seems so big. I don't know if it's something mental at this point or what, but yeah, besides all these kits, it doesn't necessarily look all that big. Anyway, there it is side by side with a Master-grade Gundam and a high-grade Gundam, so as you can see, it is normal-ish kind of high-grade size, but again, there's something about it that just feels so large. Yeah, this is one of the definite strangest things I've ever experienced with a kit like this. It doesn't really film as big as it feels, and it kind of feels bigger than it films. I guess it isn't really that big, but just something about the legs makes it seem that way. Anyway, getting into some more natural light, because sometimes the studio light can make colors look strange, especially this kind of combination of a blue-tinged green on navy blue. It can definitely screw with color grading a little bit. So here's what it looks like in some natural light and some different kind of backgrounds with it. Again, an impressive, beautiful looking kit. And speaking of which, getting into that full 360 spin so you can see every little angle of this for yourself. Again, there's detail on detail on detail. The build was incredible. The only real letdown is the color of the eyes not really being all that impressive out of box. And there is some stickers required for this, which I'm about to talk about just now, right now. Let's go. So when it comes to the color correcting stickers, this is it. So it's two kind of colors from the kit that are missing. Number one right there, the gray pieces, those are for on this little segment right here. Just the rear aspect right there is missing the color, that is all. That right there is just meant to be in a little bit of a dark gray, but that, again, not the worst. Next up, we've got number 2 right there in that navy blue color. And that right there is from this segment right here on the arm. So that's when you're meant to attach that onto. I guess some of the forearmy section is meant to be running up joint-wise onto the arm right there. Again, not the worst by any means, and not really that noticeable, nothing critical. Again, to me, the only thing that's really kind of negative about the color on this is the eyes needing that little dab of paint. So finally now, when it does come to the model kit sins on this particular mech right here, and what I mean by that is the knobs, seam lines, and mold lines. So for the most part, the knobs, even though it is a darker plastic, aren't really that big of a deal. Now this kit right here, I did just kind of snap together fairly quickly, cut it out, just 2 nips everywhere, and you're not really seeing too much in the lines of knobs on it. However, I will mention this is a kit that is rife with seams. If you look on the top of the shoulders, on the front of all of the legs, there is a seam line. That is where 2 parts are attached together. Now, of course, on this particular mecha, there shouldn't be lines there. It's not lines between the actual plates of armor on it. This is just a kind of quick way to kind of mold something, so they are kind of there. They're not the greatest, they're not the worst, but if you are a perfectionist, you might want to seal those up. So now jumping into the accessories, and here's absolutely everything the 30-minute missions Liger tail comes with. So when it comes to the back weapons, we've got the Songbirds and the BML G2, and when it comes to the held equipment, we've got the Gatling gun as well as the Tai Yang Shou. On top of that then, we've got the 2 parts for mounting the weapons around back, and we do have some decals included in here as well in multiple sizes, and we've got 6 in total. So taking a look at the weapons, and we're going to start off with the Songbirds, because I was going to say these are exactly the same as what we saw before on the Nightfall, until I realized they're not actually. So yeah, when it comes to the Nightfall, we do indeed have a Songbirds up there on the, well, it's right hand shoulder weapon. This one that we get in here is actually for on the left hand side of the actual unit. So this is a mirrored version of this. So it's not the same one included, it's a Songbirds on, well, from the other side. So if you do want a unit equipped with 2 Songbirds, that is what you need this one for. This can't just be flipped. So again, the Songbirds right here attached is pretty simply, just pop them onto the back rack segment just like so. That attaches into a 3mm peg hole around back, and when it is attached, it does have 2 points of pivoting, just like this. Simple, and like what we saw before, but flipped. So next up in here we've got the other shoulder weapon, which is a split missile launcher that fires to the front and then the missile split, like this right here. Basically it comes at this end right here. All this particular weapon can do is just pivot like so, but it is incredibly detailed. Once again, I will kind of throw back a little bit to the Nightfall video I did. If you want to get these detailed up really quickly and get these kind of panel markers, panel line markers, they can just kind of glob all over it and then just wipe off the excess. It brings out all the details super quickly and super nicely. But then, even still plain, it looks nice too. When it comes to attaching these onto the mecha, it's exactly the same as we saw before, just on the other side, same rack and everything. We have more points of articulation on this, so that is 3 in total, so you can get it into the right angle or move it back out of the way. These look incredible on so far, and all I can say is if there was one minor negative thing to say about these, is just like the rest of the kit, in some places they do have some noticeable seam lines running through the top, but otherwise, very nicely detailed. So the next weapon we have in here, and probably the main event, is the Gatling. First off, we do have a spinny Gatling bit right here, so if you wanted to get kind of crazy, you could probably actually motorize this. There is a lot of space inside of it. This little bit right here, this is nice and flexible, the ammo belt section. Up top we do have a little bit of a slot. That does mean this is usable with the racks that we do see on the Armored Core kits for storing it up on the shoulder. None is included with this kit. Overall, the detail is absolutely incredible. We've got this almost little kind of section on the bottom, which this can just rest on the ground with. And there is the handle for attachment round back. Overall, one impressive looking Gatling, definitely. So again, this attaching to the hand involves popping off the hand, opening the hand sandwich style. This, as usual, is the ham in the sandwich. You throw it into both slices like so. It holds on absolutely perfect. The back of this hand goes on. In my mind, it feels like it's going on backwards all the time. It's weird. But anyway, that's the way it pops on. And when you actually attach it into the wrist of this particular Armored Core, it holds on absolutely perfect. It's a big weapon, but the plastic on plastic joints actually just kind of hold real well. Getting into a, well, not even a pose, just turn it around so you can see what it looks like in the hand, and so far so good. One weapon left. So the last piece of equipment we have in here is the melee weapon. Now this is the Taiyang Shou, aka the Fist of the Sun. This is basically a bunch of little, as you can see underneath in here, it's a bunch of tiny little explosives which are basically thrown at short range. Most weapons when it comes to Armored Core don't necessarily do anything, but this is one that actually has a little bit of a kind of opening mechanism. You push up on these little guys in here, which raises this here, and you just take it out like that. The outer surface is armored, the inner side right here is the little explosive segments, and then instead of putting it in flat, you just slot it onto the side like that. So one more time, that is this little bit right here, and then attach it on like so. You can kind of see the attachment points inside of it, but it's still pretty cool that you can display it open if you want to. So yeah, even though this is a kind of medium to short range kind of explosive weapon, it does attach into the melee weapon attachment on the forearm like so. So that right there is what it looks like attached onto the forearm. There it is, opened up. As for swapping it back to close, this is very simple. You literally just push it from both sides and it just falls back into position perfectly. Very nice. Anyway, there's what it looks like closed. And yeah, I guess it's time to move on to the articulation. So before actually testing out the articulation on it, I thought it'd be a shame to kind of take all the weapons off without throwing it into a couple of poses. So I was very curious as to how the tetrapod legs would work out. Overall, they are very nice. I threw a little bit of a kind of raised platform behind to see how it would look like. It was almost like moving through some kind of terrain, and it did work out very nicely. Overall, the posability is super nice. The pose turned out great. This, I feel, might be the best kind of pose you're going to get out of it. This kind of nice, aiming, ready to fire, standing in a nice pose kind of pose. I tried to grab the Simple Stand by Good Smile Company to get this up on. It is a heavy-ish kit. I had to tighten the screws on it to make sure that it didn't flop over, but still, this stand had no issue at all holding it up. I tried to spread all the legs out to kind of get a little bit of a kind of hover look to it, but once again, when it comes to the kind of upper body and whatnot, the only real poses that kind of work out well are a kind of aiming pose or a kind of just standard standing there kind of pose, but overall looking great in both. At this point, I realized that I never tried any compatibility. Of course, all the different elements of these kits are compatible with each other. I grabbed the Orbiter's legs just to see what this kit would look like if it was just a regular bipedal mech, and this works out so awesomely. I really hope and I see the potential with releasing all of these kits in a standard grayscale. just so you can actually mix and match the pieces any way that you want without paint. That would be so cool. Anyway, onto the full articulation. So finally now onto the articulation, and overall, well, ignoring this stand right here, I'll pop that off. This is rock solid, which is very important with something with so much going on. The last thing you want to do is get it into a little bit of a pose and then it to just start falling apart. But overall, so far, very impressive. Just like I had it a second ago, I'm going to pop it in half into the two elements. I will mention that does happen a lot. The boosters on this particular kit are just two simple little verniers that kind of, I just don't, you know, they're kind of positioned in a place that you'll end up catching them a lot, and it doesn't take too much to pop them out. But yeah, the upper body is pretty much what we would have seen before. The neck here is a reasonably simple ball joint. It can look left and right, and there is a little bit of tilt up and down and side to side, but not a huge amount. The shoulders are a ball joint just into that section, no other moving part but the ball joint, and you get that full shoulder roll, full 360 spin, and a little bit of forward and back. The upper arm here has a little bit of tilt from a C-clip, not a whole lot. We do have a little bit of movement in the arm itself that is separate to the shoulder. We've got the full spin right here. The elbow bend goes from there to there, so it's a very simple little elbow bend and just a rotation for the arm. As for the torso itself right here, there's nothing really going on per se. There's no actual articulation in it, so it's just the ball joint there. A little bit on the simple side, and there goes that vernier again. Those are actually quite annoying. Onto the tetrapod legs right here, and there is a whole lot going on. First off, popping this off, each of the legs is attached to one of these sockets. These can actually move back and forward. When combined with this little segment in here, you do get a decent amount of motion. Yeah, that moves to the back and to the front. It's good and stiff the way you want it. So what you do get is a nice bit of movement like that. So it comes all the way in and all the way out. So when it comes to the legs on this, the front and back ones are different. Mainly, we've got motion up at this section right here, the knee as well. So there it is all the way straight. There it is almost lightning bolted. The ankle joint here is quite nice because we do have a little bit of a, it's a little bit hard to see there, but we do have a little bit of a moving section inside right there. It moves down and up like so, and there is a ball joint then attached. So it does all move very nicely. The rear limbs are pretty much the same, but a little bit different. Actually, the bending points, I think, are the same. That feels a little bit more, actually. Let's see. That's it straight. That's it bent. There's the front one straight, and there it is bent. No, they're both the same. Quite a bit. Besides the larger knee armor, pretty much everything else is the same all the way around, including the extra joint right here. So overall, these do give you a lot of movement. But yeah, once all those legs are attached, there is a lot to it. You can move them all the way up at the front like that, all the way down. There is a lot of movement out of it. However, you know, if you're getting them flat on the ground, they won't really move too much, but you can kind of have it almost standing tall like so, or bring it down extremely low, just like that. Anyway, pop this bit on and see what I can get out of the usual pose. So finally there it is in the usual pose, and I did not expect it to pull it off this well. I just used the front couple of legs like a regular old pair of legs and the back ones just to support it. This is a fun kit to pose. I was really wondering how Bandai would pull off a tetrapod, but they did it so well. It's so much fun and really awesome. Anyway, that right there is it for the review. This is an absolutely ridiculously good line of model kits. Aesthetically, this does look astounding. Again, the eyes do need that little bit of detailing up, but that's been the whole line so far, and there are some mold lines here and there. But the amount of detail on it, it's just begging to be detailed up and given some panel lining and a little bit of battle damage. They've nailed what the Liger tail should look like, and it looks fantastic. When it comes to the accessories in here, you get a full loadout. That's 2 shoulder-mounted weapons and 2 arm-mounted weapons. This is fully compatible with everything that's come out before and will be coming out in this line, I guess. Lastly then, when it came to the articulation, this did impress me. I thought it would be a little bit kind of stuck in position because of the style of 4-legged mecha that it is, but you can pose it up quite well. It's limited to a couple of poses really when it comes to over-the-top looks, but it does them so well. This is the full package, definitely. This line is astounding. If you haven't tried it out yet, I highly recommend that you do. My only complaint so far? Bandai needs to release all of these kits in grey as well, so we can mix and match to our heart's content. Anyway, I got this through Hobby Link Japan, link in the description. As always, make sure to come back for more Gunpla reviews. This is not Gunpla, but it's close to it. So yeah, for more mecha reviews, and I'll see you next time. Once again, I can't finish this video right here without special thanks to the channel members and the patrons over on Patreon, including Simon Paskin, Abraxas, Caleb Engelhart, Joe, RG59061, ShadowWolf179, Van Fawn, and Scotty Thomas.